Onward Christian soldier. When Otto III died, Henry II, his cousin, became emperor. He was crowned by a new pope, Benedict VIII. Benedict and Henry had some things in common, notably killing people. Benedict was a trained soldier, and he took onward Christian soldiers rather literally. Immediately after his ordination, he led an army to crush Italian rebels in the mountains. Benedict was responsible for a number of significant developments. First, he insisted on including the filioque clause in the creed, putting yet more strain on relations with Constantinople. Then, in August 1022, he and Henry held a synod at Pavia, where they decided that marriage was to be prohibited for all clergy, not just for monks. It was a portent of things to come, but at the time it doesn't seem to have made much difference at all. The fact is that during this period, popes were not anywhere near as powerful as they liked to make out. In theory, they were spiritual supremos with the right to anoint the emperor. But that was really a bit of PR to big themselves up. In practice, they were humiliatingly subject to the whims of the emperor, or, just as often, the Roman aristocracy. Out of the 25 popes between 955 and 1057, 13 were appointed by local aristocrats and 12 by German emperors, who also sacked 5 of them. And that is why so many lowlifes became popes. It was either an imperial appointment, subject to the emperor's wishes, a whim, or a commodity for sale. The successors of Benedict VIII, who came from the ruling Tusculani clan, show this all too clearly. After he died in 1024, his brother, John XIX, bribed his way to the papal throne. He was a layman, so he had to be fast-tracked to popeness, i.e. tonsured, ordained, and enthroned on a single day. This utter nonentity was followed by another relative, Benedict IX, also a layman and only in his 20s. He was an appalling, immoral monster who was eventually thrown out of Rome and replaced by Sylvester III. But with the aid of Daddy's private army, he returned to Rome and kicked Sylvester out. Then he abdicated his papacy in favour of his godfather, who became Gregory VI, 1045-46. And when I say abdicated, I really mean sold it in return for a huge sum of money and an advantageous marriage. But he never actually resigned the papacy. Later he decided that actually he wanted to be pope again. The result was that in 1045 there were 3 popes knocking about. According to one folk tale, the evil Benedict was condemned to wander the earth until the day of judgment as a monster, half bear, half donkey, a bonky if you will. The situation was resolved by a new emperor, Henry III, who had come to Rome to be crowned emperor. Henry III was a devout Christian and zealous reformer. He took a simple course to sort out the mess. He sacked the lot and replaced them with his own choice. Unsurprisingly, he chose a German, or a succession of Germans, because actually the first few proved to be not terribly resistant to malaria. Sorry. They fell like flies, or mosquitoes. The first of Henry III's popes lasted 10 months, the second 23 days. By now, people were starting to realise that being pope was a bit like being the drummer in Spinal Tap. It brought with it a high fatality rate. So, the third nominee, Bruno, Bishop of Toul, was extremely reluctant to take the post, and agreed only if there was a miraculous sign. He would go to Rome in the guise of a simple pilgrim, and if the people spontaneously proclaimed him pope, only then would he take it. He went, they proclaimed him, and he became Leo IX. It was a miracle. On the other hand, Leo was a tall, red-haired German, so maybe he wasn't that hard to spot. North and south, north and south. This Leo really put the papacy on the map, and probably used an actual map as well, because he travelled widely. Northern Italy, France, Germany, 2 weeks in Benidorm, arguing for reform, preaching to packed crowds, presiding at magnificent services and ceremonies. He was the first Euro-Pope. One of the first things he did was to call a synod. To the surprise of those who attended, the first item on the agenda was for everyone to give a personal statement of interests. Every cleric there had to stand up and declare whether or not he had paid for his post. 5 of them confessed, including the Bishop of Langres, who fled the meeting and was excommunicated. When the Archbishop of Besançon attempted to defend him, he was struck dumb halfway through his speech. It was another miracle. Leo deposed bishops who had purchased their positions. Then he imported his own backroom staff, a whole tranche of new cardinals. He followed this up with a hearts and minds tour through Europe, promoting his reformist agenda of chastity and integrity, and sacking any bishop who wouldn't sign up to the new code of conduct. It was all going terribly well. Then Leo made a bit of a misjudgment. Around 1015, 20 pilgrims from the north had made a visit to the shrine of the Archangel Michael on Monte Gargano in Puglia. They were big for pilgrims, Scandinavian looking, and unusually carrying a range of heavy weaponry. They were in fact Normans, men from the north, and the result of their pilgrimage was that they liked the place so much that they decided to stay on. Soon word got out that in Puglia there were jobs going for mercenaries, and weather there was heaps better than in Normandy, so loads of other Norman pilgrims started arriving. Eventually they kicked the Muslims out of Sicily and then began to encroach into southern Italy. By 1050 they had gained a considerable amount of land and had mutated from mercenaries into conquerors. The Normans were Latin Christians. In fact, they started insisting, with papal approval, that all the churches in their region follow the Western customs, including using unleavened bread and the hated in the East filioque clause. But Leo decided that the power was growing too great. He raised an army, marched into battle, and was humiliatingly defeated. The papal army was routed, and the Pope himself taken prisoner. The Normans weren't going anywhere. They were there to stay.